The first sound was the roar. It wasn't a single voice, not even a single species. It was a tidal wave of noise crashing down from every side of the colossal chamber. 20,000 throats screamed, clicked, bellowed, hissed, and shrieked all at once. The grand arena of Nexus Station had been built for this, for blood, for spectacle, for the kind of violence that transcended language. Professor Vexnar adjusted his breathing apparatus, the valves whistling softly as he inhaled the chemical blend his lungs required. His 4 fingers twitched on the controls of his ocular implant as he zoomed in on the sand below. He had seen many such events in his 17 orbital cycles as a xenobiologist of the Galactic Council, but today was different. Today, a human was fighting. "Are you recording, Traz?" His voice rasped with excitement. "Yes, Professor. All 6 cameras are operational." Traz, his assistant, blinked all 4 of his eyes in rapid sequence. It was a nervous habit that set Vexnar's tendrils on edge. "Though I must register my formal protest again about attending this barbaric event." "Your protest is noted, ignored, and frankly annoying," Vexnar replied, dismissing him with a wave of his tendrils. "Do you have any idea what this means for science, for history? The first human to challenge a Dravak champion in over 50 cycles. This data will advance our understanding by decades." He leaned forward on the observation platform, his ocular lens focusing on the combat floor below. The arena stretched wide and flat, a circle of hardened composite dirt baked under unforgiving lights. Around its edges, massive banners displayed the crest of the Dravak Empire, a stylized predator insect in gleaming silver. The crowd was a storm, 37 species packed into tiered seats. Some excreted pheromones so thick they stung Vexnar's nostrils, others pulsed with bioluminescence in excitement. It was chaos, color, and sound, but at the center in the arena's circle was silence. The stage was waiting. Traz fidgeted beside him. "I still do not understand why the human agreed to this. The Dravak champion has killed 26 consecutive challengers. His exoskeleton can withstand plasma fire. And the human—" Traz's secondary arms twitched as he gestured helplessly toward the sandy floor. "The human is so squishy." Vexnar expelled a sharp snort of air, startling a nearby Florin whose fronds curled defensively. "That's the fascinating part, you simple-minded drone. Humans are notorious for 3 things across the galaxy: their bizarre mating rituals, their toxic digestive systems, and their completely irrational confidence." Before Traz could respond, the crowd erupted again. The massive display screens flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the combat floor. The Dravak champion entered. Gorantar, the destroyer of worlds, the undefeated terror of the arenas. He strode forward on 6 limbs, towering nearly 4 meters tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights. His body was a nightmare of blades and pincers, every movement fluid and deadly. Mandibles clicked rhythmically, a sound that had marked the final moments of 97 opponents. The Dravak section of the crowd began to stomp in unison, the vibrations rattling through the structure. Vexnar felt it in his gut. "Magnificent," Vexnar whispered, already dictating notes. "Silicon compounds incorporated directly into the exoskeleton, copper-based blood, muscle strands woven with crystalline fibers, a physiology designed for slaughter." "Professor," Traz interrupted, his voice trembling, "the human is entering." Vexnar swiveled his ocular stalks, and for the first time in 17 cycles, all 3 of his hearts skipped. She was small. The human woman stood barely 1.7 meters tall, bipedal, soft-skinned, laughably fragile compared to the towering monster across from her. Her exposed face and arms were pale, marked only by a smear of dirt. The rest of her body was clad in black fabric, tight, seamless, without armor plating, without obvious reinforcement. And worst of all, she carried no weapon, none. "This is suicide," Traz whispered, his vocal sac collapsing flat in despair. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena, translated into 17 languages at once. Entering the arena, the undefeated champion of the Dravak Empire, winner of 97 consecutive matches, destroyer of worlds, terror of Chidnis, Gorantar. The roar was deafening. Gorantar raised his bladed limbs high, mandibles clattering in victory before the fight even began. "And challenging today?" The announcer's tone shifted, a ripple of confusion in the many voices. "From the recently admitted Human Federation, Myra Kane." The human section of the crowd, barely 50 individuals scattered through the sea of alien bodies, cheered faintly. Their voices were swallowed by the jeers and laughter of the other species. Myra Kane, Vexnar repeated, recording the name. Noteworthy, short, harsh consonants typical of human nomenclature. She's going to die, Traz muttered. Professor, shouldn't we do something? Vexnar stared at him, genuinely perplexed. Do what? Take notes, record data, collect tissue samples afterward. Yes, we must absolutely do all those things. Very insightful, Traz. The two combatants stopped 10 meters apart, facing one another. The ritual circle. Gorantar spoke first, his mandibles clicking, voice rumbling through a translator. Human, you dishonor yourself by coming before me unarmed. How will the spectators enjoy your death if it comes too quickly? The human smiled. It was a strange expression, a curling of lips that Vexnar had always found disturbing. Humans used it for amusement, for comfort, for malice. This one reminded him of a Venusian swamp cat moments before it devoured its prey. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, Myra replied. Her voice was calm, amplified by the arena system. I think everyone's going to get their money's worth today. A murmur rippled through the arena. Even the Dravak champion hesitated, mandibles clicking in confusion. You understand this is a death match. Crystal clear, bug boy. She stretched her arms above her head, joints cracking audibly. I've got dinner plans later, so let's not drag this out. The crowd howled with laughter. The human section remained quiet. The arena signal blared. Combat had begun. Gorantar spread his limbs in the traditional stance, blades gleaming. He was a vision of death incarnate. Myra Kane sat down, cross-legged in the dirt. The entire arena went silent. Vexnar's ocular implant zoomed in so far the image blurred. Fascinating, he whispered. Gorantar froze, his bladed limbs twitching. Rise and fight, human, he demanded, confusion rasping in his voice. Myra shrugged. Why don't you come make me? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Traz was trembling beside Vexnar. What is she doing? Professor, what is she doing? I have absolutely no idea, Vexnar admitted, his voice trembling for the first time in decades. And it's glorious. The Dravak champion advanced, slow and cautious, blades gleaming with each step. Myra Kane just smiled. The arena lights shifted, beams narrowing until the two figures were bathed in brilliance. The Dravak champion stood like a war god in steel and chitin, 6 limbs spread wide, polished exoskeleton gleaming as though the blood of his 97 victims had only sharpened his glory. Across from him, Myra Kane sat cross-legged in the dirt. Her back was straight, her hands resting lightly on her knees. She looked less like a warrior and more like someone awaiting a meditation bell. No armor, no weapon, no sign of fear, only that strange human smile. The crowd didn't know what to do. On one side of the arena, the Dravak pounded the floor with bladed limbs, creating a rhythm that throbbed through the entire station. Their chants rose, a guttural chorus of confidence. In another section, the Valyrians began a clicking chant of their own, amused by the humans' apparent madness. Other species hissed, jeered, or laughed. Only the humans remained quiet. Professor Vexnar adjusted his ocular implant, zooming until the human's face filled his view. That smile, it unsettled him. He had seen it once before on a Venusian swamp cat moments before it leapt for his throat. She is projecting confidence, he muttered, recording his observations. But her endocrine signals suggest otherwise. Elevated adrenaline, cortisol spikes. Biologically, she should be in panic. Then why is she sitting? Traz asked. His 4 eyes blinked out of sequence, a telltale sign of agitation. Why doesn't she run or hide or at least stand? Vexnar's tendrils coiled with excitement. Because she's human, Traz, and humans are never what they appear. The Dravak champion finally broke the standoff. His mandibles clacked in irritation, translator converting the harsh sound into booming words. Rise and fight. Myra tilted her head, her smile curling wider. Why don't you come and make me? Gasps rippled across the arena. Even the announcer stuttered into silence. Gorantar's compound eyes narrowed. He lunged. It was a strike meant to end things instantly, both forelimbs swinging down, blades sharp enough to shear through alloy plating. The air itself screamed as the claws scythed toward the human's fragile frame. But Myra was no longer sitting. She rolled backward, flat to the ground, the blades slicing through the air where her head had been. She sprang up in the same motion, landing lightly on her feet, dust rising around her boots. The crowd roared, 1,000 languages collapsing into disbelief. Vexnar's notes scrolled rapidly across his ocular display. Reaction time, extraordinary, anticipation, reflex, training, must analyze later. Traz squeaked, pointing at the scanners. Professor, look, her neural activity, it's spiking. She's not panicking, she's focusing. Myra's smile sharpened. She stretched her arms lazily as though mocking the champion. You're fast, she said, voice echoing through the system, but not fast enough. Gorantar bellowed, mandibles clattering like a hailstorm. His pride was wounded. That was dangerous. He attacked again. This time his pincers struck from opposite sides, designed to crush. Myra ducked and slid, dirt spraying behind her. A blade swept overhead, close enough to shear a strand of her hair. Another jabbed forward, but she twisted sideways, her body folding at impossible angles, and the strike caught only air. The monster roared in frustration. His movements grew faster, a blur of limbs striking from 6 different angles, but Myra was always gone a heartbeat before contact. She ducked, rolled, spun, and flipped, weaving through death as if she had rehearsed this exact dance. The audience, at first annoyed by the lack of blood, began to shift. The laughter turned to murmurs. The murmurs became silence. Even the Dravak supporters, who had been stomping in unison, grew still. Vexnar whispered in awe, she's exploiting his psychology. He expects fear. He thrives on it, but she mocks him. She destabilizes him. Traz's voice trembled. But she still hasn't struck back. She cannot penetrate his exoskeleton. How can she win if she never attacks? That, Vexnar said, is what I intend to find out. Down below, Myra laughed. Not a nervous laugh, but genuine amusement. Come on, bug boy, she called, dodging another slash. All those fancy blades, all those trophies, and you still can't hit me. The words carried, amplified by the arena system. The Dravak's rage deepened. His mandibles snapped like breaking stone. He launched a furious flurry, blades striking the arena floor, sending sparks and fragments flying. Each miss only made his movements more desperate. Myra danced through it all. Her breaths came fast, her body slick with sweat, but her grin never faltered. The scanners above painted the truth. Professor, Traz whispered, eyes wide. Her heart rate is stabilizing, her hormone levels are shifting, she's adapting. Persistence predators, Vexnar murmured. His hearts thundered in his chest as he recalled ancient human studies. On their homeworld, they did not kill with claws or fangs. They ran, and ran, and ran, until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. We may be seeing the same pattern here. The arena floor bore the marks of Gorantar's fury, deep gouges, shattered stone, cracked composite. But Myra was untouched. Not a single blade had drawn blood. Finally, the champion slowed. His massive body heaved, muscles built for explosive violence struggling under the demands of prolonged pursuit. His movements, once precise, grew clumsy. His blades dragged a fraction too long before retracting. His pincers clashed with air instead of flesh. Myra noticed. Her eyes sharpened, her steps became bolder. She no longer retreated far, sometimes darting close enough to brush his limb with her fingertips before darting away again. The crowd gasped at her audacity. Gorantar snapped at her in fury. Coward, fight with honor. Honor, Myra's laugh was sharp. Honor is for the dead, I prefer winning. She began striking, not full blows, but light taps. A touch here on the shoulder joint, a shove there at the base of a blade. Each movement was surgical, precise, like a doctor testing reflexes. Traz blinked, all 4 eyes in unison, his panic briefly replaced by curiosity. Professor, what is she doing? These strikes cannot harm him. She's probing, Vexnar whispered, his excitement rising. Mapping his body, testing the seams, searching for weakness. For the first time in his career, the xenobiologist forgot to record data. He simply stared, entranced. After 20 such contacts, Myra's expression changed. The grin faded, replaced by sharp focus. She had found something. She stopped moving. Standing directly in front of Gorantar, she spread her arms. You want me to stop running? Fine, I'll stand right here. 1 free shot. Give it your best. The arena fell silent. The Dravak's mandibles clicked furiously. His pride would not allow him to refuse. He raised both front blades, each gleaming with fatal promise. "Your death wish," he rumbled, "is granted." The blades came down in a devastating crosscut. Myra shifted at the last instant, not fully evading, but letting one blade graze her arm, drawing a shallow line of blood. Red droplets splattered across the dirt. The announcer's many throats roared at once. First blood to the champion. The crowd erupted. The Dravek spectators stomped and shrieked in triumph, but their victory cry ended abruptly. Because Myra Kane moved. Her fist shot forward, fast as lightning, striking a point at Gorantar's midsection, right where two plates of exoskeleton overlapped. It looked insignificant, a tap compared to the monster's bulk. But Gorantar froze. All 6 limbs locked rigid, his mandibles clattered in shock. "That's," Traz's voice cracked. "That's impossible," she struck the neural cluster. Vexnar's eyes widened. Theoretical vulnerability, unproven, she just proved it. Myra stepped back, blood dripping from her arm, her breathing steady. "Round 1, she said softly, her voice carrying across the silent arena. "Your move, bug boy." For the first time in nearly a century of combat, Gorantar did not move. The crowd stared in disbelief as the monstrous champion stood locked in place, every limb stiff, mandibles twitching uncontrollably. His compound eyes glittered with rage and confusion, but his body refused to obey. The silence in the grand arena was suffocating. 20,000 beings from 37 species, all of them frozen, trying to understand what they were seeing. Only one figure moved. Myra Kane. The human stood calmly, one arm bleeding freely down her skin, but her breathing was steady, focused. She circled the immobilized Titan slowly, her boots crunching on the arena floor. She wasn't triumphant, wasn't boastful, only methodical, as if dissecting a specimen. Professor Vexnar could barely keep his ocular implant steady. His notes scrawled in jagged, hurried lines across his display. Direct neural disruption. Struck at seam. Confirmed theory. Humans capable of locating structural weaknesses through observation and testing. Beside him, Traz's 4 eyes blinked in terrified synchrony. "Professor, how did she know? That vulnerability was only ever proposed in theory. No one has ever tested it on a living Dravek." Vexnar's tendrils curled tight against his chest. She connected the patterns. She must have studied the champion's fights, searched for anomalies, moments of hesitation. His voices trembled. "This is human ingenuity, pattern recognition. They thrive on it." Below, Myra crouched until her eyes were level with Gorantar's paralyzed form. The crowd leaned forward, translators straining to catch every word. "Your neural cluster will reset soon," she said, voice calm. "I know it. You'll recover, but not completely, and every time you do, I'll strike again." Gasps rippled through the spectators. It wasn't a boast. It was a statement of fact. Vexnar's hearts pounded. She's not fighting him like a warrior. She's fighting him like a scientist. Traz whispered, "Then she's won already." Vexnar shook his head violently. "No, she's wounded him, but he's not finished. She's buying time for what I don't know, but the real fight is only beginning." And indeed, the paralysis began to fade. Gorantar's limbs twitched. His mandibles clattered violently, spitting fury through the translator. "You filthy mammal, you dare." He staggered forward, his movements jerky, uncoordinated. No longer the graceful predator who had crushed opponents by the dozens, but a wounded beast struggling to control its own body. The crowd erupted again, some in outrage, others in exhilaration. Bets shifted wildly. Valyrian gamblers shouted into their devices. A group of Zenturi began a new chant, half mockery, half awe. Myra backed away, keeping her stance loose, her smile faint. She wasn't afraid. She was hunting. Gorantar attacked again, roaring, blades flailing in wide arcs. His movements were powerful but sloppy, his coordination compromised by the neural disruption. Myra slipped aside, ducked under a pincer, rolled away from a sweeping blade. Dust streaked her black suit, sweat glistened on her skin, but her movements grew sharper, more confident with every second. The champion howled in rage. "Stand still, die with honor." "Pass," Myra shot back, breathless but amused. She darted forward, tapped the back of his leg joint, then darted away before his limb could smash the floor where she'd stood. "She's tiring him out again," Vexnar muttered, hardly able to contain himself. Look at his respiration rate, his muscle strain. Dravek physiology isn't built for prolonged exertion. Traz stared at the bioscans. But Professor, her vitals, her body should be collapsing under stress. Instead, she's stabilizing, as if she's adapting. Vexnar's tendrils quivered. Persistence hunters. On their homeworld, humans ran their prey to exhaustion. It's encoded into them. And now she's turning a battlefield into a hunt. The crowd could see it, too. The jeers had shifted into uneasy murmurs. The Dravek spectators shrieked louder, stomping desperately, but there was fear threaded through the sound. The alien empire's undefeated champion was staggering, his attacks clumsy, while the small, fragile human remained untouched. Minutes passed, Gorantar's movements slowed further. His limbs, once blurs of death, now dragged through the air. His breathing rasped, his compound eyes flicked with rising desperation. Myra never stopped smiling. Finally, she struck again. Not a killing blow, not yet. Another precise jab at the seam of his exoskeleton. Gorantar froze mid-strike, limbs locking again. His roar cut off into silence, his body paralyzed once more. The arena erupted in chaos. "He's helpless again," Traz whispered, disbelief thick in his voice. "How is this possible? How can such a soft creature?" "She's not soft," Vexnar interrupted sharply. His voice carried a reverence it had never held for any other species. "She's a weapon." Below, Myra tilted her head, studying the frozen giant. She raised her voice so every spectator could hear. "You've been studied, Gorantar, every fight, every movement. Humans call it connecting the dots. You think you're unpredictable, you're not, you're a pattern." She stepped back, letting his body twitch as it fought to recover. "When the dots line up," she said, "we see the truth." The crowd fell silent again, unease spreading like wildfire. After 90 seconds, Gorantar roared back to life. His limbs flailed, crashing into the floor, but his coordination was gone. The great champion stumbled, almost collapsing under his own weight. His mandibles clicked wildly. "You dare humiliate me?" he thundered. "I will tear you apart." Myra shook her head, calm even as dust and shards flew around her. "No," she said, her eyes narrowed. "You won't." For the first time, Vexnar felt something new as he watched her. Not curiosity, not fascination, but fear. Because as Myra Kane stood there, bleeding, smiling, utterly unshaken, he realized something horrifying. She wasn't improvising. She had planned this. Every step, every evasion, every tap, every smile. Measured, calculated, executed with a predator's patience. And the Dravek, the Empire's undefeated terror, had walked straight into her trap. The paralysis faded again, but the damage was done. Gorantar staggered, each step clumsy, his 6 limbs jerking in uneven rhythm. The predator's grace that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something raw and desperate. He slashed and stabbed at the human with renewed fury, but the blows landed wide, gouging trenches into the arena floor instead of flesh. And through it all, Myra Kane kept moving. Not frantically, not desperately, calmly, fluidly. Every roll, every pivot, every sidestep looked almost casual, as though she were sparring in training rather than fighting a monster built for war. Sweat streaked her face, dust clung to her clothes, but her breathing was steady, focused. "She's stabilizing," Traz said in awe, watching the scanner data scroll across his display. "Heart rate normalizing, respiratory function optimal, cortisol declining. Professor, this isn't just endurance, it's like she's enjoying it." Vexnar's tendrils quivered with exhilaration. Flow state. Humans call it being in the zone. Their neural activity spikes, their efficiency soars, they thrive under pressure, they become more. On the arena floor, Myra laughed, a bright, sharp sound that carried through the silence between blows. "Come on, Gorantar," she taunted, ducking under a pincer and springing away. "You've killed 97 opponents and this is the best you've got. My grandmother moves faster than you." The crowd reacted instantly. At first, it was outrage. The Dravek section shrieked in fury, mandibles clattering as their warriors stomped the floor to drown out her words. Other species booed, hissed, or roared their disapproval. To mock a champion, to mock the tradition of the arena was unthinkable. But not all voices were angry. In scattered pockets, laughter broke through. Nervous at first, then louder. A group of Valyrians hooted, their multi-throated tones carrying far. Some Zenchuri began to chant her name, awkwardly, their tongues ill-suited for human syllables but recognizable nonetheless. Mira, Mira. It spread, not fast, not overwhelming, but enough, a ripple of shifting allegiance. The Dravek were no longer watching a slaughter, they were watching a spectacle. Gorantar felt it too. The champion's fury burned hotter than ever. His compound eyes flicked wildly between his opponent and the crowd, as if realizing for the first time that the audience's loyalty was slipping. "You dare humiliate me," his translator bellowed. "You dare mock the honor of the Dravek Empire." Myra slid under another blade, springing to her feet just behind him. She tapped the joint of his rear limb, grinning. "Oh, I'm not mocking you," she said lightly. "I'm exposing you." The words cut deeper than any blade. In the observation box, Vexnar was nearly trembling with excitement. "Do you see it, Traz? The psychological shift. She's not just fighting him physically. She's dismantling him socially, culturally, symbolically. Every word erodes his authority. Every laugh undermines his power." Traz's eyes blinked in a panicked rhythm. "But Professor, if she loses now, if she falls, it won't just be her body that dies. It will be all of humanity's reputation. They will be remembered as arrogant fools who mocked the Empire before being crushed." "Precisely," Vexnar snapped, his tendrils curling in triumph. "That's the brilliance of it. She has raised the stakes beyond victory or defeat. If she wins, her people rise immeasurably. If she loses, they die in infamy. This isn't combat, it's diplomacy through blood." Back in the arena, Myra stood still. For the first time since the fight began, she stopped moving, stopped evading. Dust clung to her skin, blood dripped steadily from her shallow wound, but her smile remained steady. "You're wondering," she said, raising her voice so the crowd could hear, "how I knew about your weakness, how I knew where to strike." The Dravak champion froze mid-step, his mandibles clattering in confusion. "After your 84th fight," Myra continued, "against the Parnassian Gladiator, you took a glancing blow here." She tapped her side, the same seam she'd exploited. "You locked up for 7 seconds. Most people missed it, but not us." Gasps spread through the arena. Vexnar's ocular implant whirred as he frantically pulled up the record of that fight. His hearts lurched. She was right. He dismissed the hesitation as meaningless. 7 seconds. She had seen what no one else had. And then Myra went on, packing slowly. "Your 93rd match, the Vordek twins, same spot. This time you froze for 12 seconds. The commentators said it was a tactical pause, but I knew better." The crowd erupted in murmurs, voices overlapping as translations spread the revelation. Professor Vexnar whispered, awestruck, "Pattern recognition. They excel at it, even with incomplete information." She turned fragments of data into strategy. She weaponized knowledge. The champion's mandibles clattered violently. "You dare study me? You dare reduce me to calculations?" Myra grinned, standing tall despite the blood streaking her arm. "Of course I did. You've been fighting for glory. I've been fighting for survival, and survival doesn't lie." The shift in the arena was undeniable now. Where there had been jeers, there was now tension. Where there had been certainty of the champion's victory, there was doubt. The chant of her name grew louder, mingling with boos and shrieks, until the sound was a chaotic storm. The human section still said nothing. They sat rigid, watching with stillness that chilled Vexnar to his bones. "Traz," he whispered, "do you see them? They aren't cheering, they aren't moving." Traz nodded, shivering. "It's unnatural. Why are they so still?" "Because," Vexnar said slowly, realization dawning, "they are hunting, not literally, but in their posture, in their eyes. The outcome is already decided. The prey might still thrash, still fight, but in their minds," he swallowed. "The prey is already dead." Gorantar roared again, his fury boiling over. "Enough, I will end this." He lunged forward, all 6 limbs striking at once. Blades and pincers blurred, a storm of death converging on the fragile human. The crowd screamed, but Myra was no longer there. She dropped low, rolled directly beneath him, and as he thundered past, she kicked upward, both boots slamming into the vulnerable seam she had already mapped. The impact lifted the massive champion several centimeters off the ground before he crashed down, paralyzed again, limbs sprawling helplessly. The arena exploded into chaos. Species shouted in disbelief, betting devices lit up as fortunes shifted in seconds. The announcers' many throats struggled to speak over the pandemonium. Professor Vexnar's tendrils coiled so tightly they trembled. She's done it again, complete motor disruption. Longer duration this time, 90 seconds, maybe more. Traz, do you understand what this means? Traz shook his head, terrified. That humanity isn't fighting fair. Vexnar turned to him, all three hearts hammering. No, he whispered. That humanity doesn't need to fight fair, they only need to win. The arena smelled of dust and alien blood. Gorantar lay sprawled in the dirt again, his limbs twitching helplessly, his mandibles clattering in impotent rage. The paralysis was worse this time. Longer, deeper, his motor control shattered by the precise strike Myra Kane had delivered. The crowd was pandemonium. The Dravak section screeched in fury, their warriors slamming the stands with armored limbs until the vibrations rattled the entire station. Other species shouted in disbelief, translators churning into dozens of overlapping voices. Bets shifted so quickly that numbers scrolled in a blur across the massive screens. And the humans? Silent. 50 figures scattered across the stands, each sitting perfectly still, eyes fixed on the arena floor. Their faces unreadable, their bodies tense. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of inevitability. They know, Vexnar whispered, his ocular implants zooming on their expressions. They know the outcome. Traz blinked all four eyes in rapid rhythm. How can they know? She's small, she's fragile, she bleeds. If she makes one mistake, she dies. Vexnar's tendrils coiled, his voices low. Because to them, this isn't chance. This is the hunt. The prey has already been chosen. The moment she entered this arena, she decided the Dravak would fall. Myra Kane stood calmly, dust clinging to her suit, blood dripping steadily from her wounded arm. She walked slowly around the paralyzed champion, her boots crunching on shattered stone. When she spoke, her voice carried through the silence, amplified by the arena's sound system. I want to be very clear about something, Gorantar, she said, crouching until she was level with his immobilized face. His compound eyes glared, but his body betrayed him, locked in place. This isn't personal. I don't hate you. I don't even hate your people. Her words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. To most, the arena was bloodsport. To hear mercy spoken in its midst was unthinkable. Myra continued, her tone steady. This is about the Tresian colony, about the 16 human settlements your empire annexed after claiming we abandoned them. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The murmurs rose to shouts. Vexnar's hearts lurched. The Tresian dispute was infamous. 3 million humans caught in contested territory, stripped of rights, condemned to labor under Dravak law. Negotiations had dragged for years, mired in bureaucracy. Nothing had changed. Until now. She's invoking diplomacy, Vexnar breathed, awestruck. She's using the arena as a stage for negotiation. Traz's vocal sac inflated rapidly, quivering with distress. But Professor, this isn't sanctioned. There's nothing in the Council records, no authorization from the Federation for such a maneuver. Vexnar's tendrils shook with excitement. Then it's off record, unofficial, which makes it even more dangerous. Myra stood, addressing the entire arena now, her voice clear and commanding. 3 million humans live in those settlements. Under Dravak law, they have no rights, no future, no hope. She turned slowly, ensuring every spectator, every recording device captured her words. Our diplomats have been ignored for 6 years, so today I've come with a message your people understand. She spread her arms, blood dripping from her fingertips. Strength. The silence was absolute. Even the announcers' many throats hesitated. Gorantar's mandibles twitched furiously, but no sound emerged. Myra crouched again, looking him directly in the eye. You respect power, you respect victory, so I'll give you both. She stood and raised her voice once more. By the ancient laws of combat, recognized by all species of the Council, the outcome of this duel is binding. If I win, the Tresian colonies return to human governance within 30 standard days. The arena exploded. Dravak shrieked in fury, their voices like tearing metal. Other species shouted, debated, argued, their translators struggling to keep up. The Valyrians cackled in disbelief, the Zenturi hissed their approval, and the humans remained perfectly still. Professor Vexnar's hands shook as he recorded. Unprecedented. A single duel repurposed into political theater. If she succeeds, the entire legal framework of the council will be forced to acknowledge the claim. Traz's eyes darted between scanners and crowd. And if she fails? Vexnar didn't look away from the human. Then her people lose everything. But if she succeeds, he exhaled, his breath whistling through the valves of his respirator. Then humanity has just outmaneuvered the most feared empire in the quadrant. On the arena floor, Myra bent and picked something up. A shard of Gorantar's own exoskeleton, jagged and sharp, broken during his wild, desperate attacks. The crowd gasped as she held it aloft, its serrated edge glinting under the lights. Vexnar's tendrils stiffened. By the void, she planned this. She wanted him to break pieces of himself. The Dravak carapace is one of the few substances capable of piercing its own armor. Traz's vocal sac quivered so violently he nearly toppled. She lured him into his own destruction. Myra crouched again, holding the shard in both hands. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Like I said, Gorantar, this isn't personal, just necessary. And with clinical precision, she drove the shard into the vulnerable seam of his exoskeleton. It slid through like a blade through flesh. Gorantar convulsed once, violently, then went still. His compound eyes clouded over. The undefeated champion of the Dravak Empire was dead. The silence was crushing. Then Myra reached down, gripped the shard again, and with a single smooth motion severed his head. The entire arena recoiled. Even species accustomed to carnage flinched at the cold brutality of the act. Myra Kane rose, holding the massive head high above her own. Alien blood dripped down her arms, staining her black suit. Her expression was not triumphant, not bloodthirsty, but calm, resolved. Her voice carried through the stunned silence. I claim this victory in the name of the Human Federation. By the ancient laws of combat, the Tresian territories are rightfully human. Let the record show, the Dravak have 30 days to comply. Should they refuse? She paused, her eyes sweeping the arena. I will meet their next champion here, but next time I recommend they bring a weapon. Professor Vexnar's tendrils trembled violently, his heart's pounding so hard he feared they might burst. Unprecedented, he whispered. She has turned ritual combat into binding diplomacy. The council will be in session for months, years over this. Traz could barely speak. Professor, if the Dravak refuse, if they send another champion. Vexnar's eyes locked on the human delegation rising in unison from the stands, their movements synchronized, deliberate. They followed Myra Kane out of the arena like a hunting pack. Then, he said softly, almost reverently, we will see what humanity does when the prey refuses to fall. The grand arena had seen blood before. It had echoed with death cries, with roars of triumph, with the madness of thousands drunk on violence, but never silence like this. The great champion of the Dravak Empire, undefeated through 97 matches, lay sprawled on the dirt. His massive limbs twitched helplessly, locked in paralysis from a strike that should have been impossible. And the human, the fragile, weaponless human, stood over him. Myra Kane bled freely from her shallow wound, scarlet drops splattering against alien dust, but she stood steady. Her shoulders rose and fell with calm breath. Her eyes were clear. Her voice, when it came, carried like a blade cutting through the stunned quiet. I want to be very clear about something, Gorantar. She crouched until her gaze met his immobilized eyes. This isn't personal. I don't hate you. I don't even hate your people. The audience rippled with confusion. Murmurs in dozens of tongues surged across the tiers. Combatants didn't speak like this. Combatants screamed for glory or bellowed defiance. They did not crouch like teachers delivering a lesson. Myra's lips tightened. This is about the Tresian colony, about the 16 human settlements your empire annexed 6 years ago, settlements you claimed we abandoned, settlements where 3 million of my people now live as slaves. The silence broke. The crowd erupted in overlapping voices, shouts of shock, laughter of disbelief, gasps of horror. Translators strained to capture the storm. Professor Vexnar froze, his tendrils curling against his chest. By the void, he whispered. She's using the duel as diplomacy. Traz's 4 eyes blinked wildly in perfect unison. That's illegal. That's impossible. There are no records of the Human Federation authorizing such a maneuver. Vexnar's 3 hearts thundered. Then it isn't authorized, it's unofficial, it's dangerous, and it is brilliant. Below, Myra rose to her full height, her bloodied arm dripping steadily. She turned in a slow circle, addressing not just the fallen champion but every species watching. Our diplomats begged, she said. Our petitions were ignored, the council stalled. And while you argued over borders, over maps, over claims, 3 million humans were stripped of their rights and forced into mines. Her voice didn't tremble, it struck with the precision of a hammer. So today, she continued, raising her chin, I bring a message your people understand. She raised both arms wide, crimson streaking down pale flesh. Strength. The crowd roared a cacophony of disbelief. Some cheered, others hissed, many shrieked in outrage. But no one remained silent. Only the humans in the stand sat still. 50 figures, motionless, eyes sharp, their posture rigid. They didn't cheer, they didn't blink. They are waiting, Vexnar whispered, zooming in on their faces. Not for her victory, for his fall, to them it is already certain. Gorantar's mandibles clattered furiously, though his limbs still refused to obey. You dare use me for politics? The translator rasped. Yes, Myra said simply. She crouched again, her eyes narrowing. Because your empire understands blood better than words. She stood and looked around the arena, her voice sharp, amplified by the sound system until it filled every crevice of Nexus Station. By the ancient laws of combat, recognized by this council, the outcome of this duel is binding. If I win, the Tresian territories return to human governance within 30 standard days. Chaos. The Dravek section shrieked in fury, pounding their limbs against the stands until the vibrations shook the walls. The Valyrians cackled, the Zenchuri hissed approval, the Florins sang notes of shock. Betting devices exploded with activity as odds collapsed into madness. Vexnar could hardly keep up with his recordings. Unprecedented, a legal claim delivered through combat. If she succeeds, the council must acknowledge the outcome. If she fails, her people lose everything. Traz's vocal sac inflated to bursting. Professor, this is madness. One woman cannot change interstellar law. Vexnar turned, his ocular implant glinting. One human can. Myra bent, her hand brushing the arena floor. When she rose again, she held something jagged and sharp. A shard of Gorantar's own exoskeleton. Broken loose during his wild attacks, its serrated edge glittered under the lights. The crowd gasped as one. Vexnar's tendrils stiffened. She wanted this. She provoked him into frenzy, forced him to break pieces of himself. The Dravek carapace is one of the few substances sharp enough to pierce its own armor. Traz's eyes widened with terror. She lured him into crafting his own weapon against himself. Myra crouched once more, holding the shard in both hands like a ritual blade. Her voice softened, intimate despite the amplification. Like I said, Gorantar, this isn't personal, just necessary. Then she struck. The shard drove into the vulnerable seam she had mapped with such patience. It slid through chitin into flesh with terrible ease. The champion convulsed once. His body locked rigid, then went still. His mandibles hung open, his compound eyes clouded. The terror of the arenas, the Empire's undefeated war god, was dead. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Myra gripped the shard again, and with one smooth motion, severed his head. Even species accustomed to carnage recoiled at the act's cold precision. Gasps of horror rippled across the stands. The announcers' many throats faltered, unable to find words. Myra Kane rose, holding the massive severed head high above her own. Alien blood poured down her arms, staining her black suit, pooling at her feet. Her face was calm, not triumphant, not bloodthirsty, calm. Her voice, carried across the silence, was sharp as a blade. I claim this victory in the name of the Human Federation. By the laws of combat, the Tresian colonies are rightfully human. The Dravek Empire has 30 days to comply. She turned slowly, ensuring every eye, every lens, every recording captured her next words. Should they refuse, I will meet their next champion here. But next time, her lips curled into a razor smile, I recommend they bring a weapon. The silence shattered. The Dravek section howled like a wounded beast, their stomps so violent the floor trembled. Other species shouted, debated, laughed, cursed. The humans alone remained silent, their stillness now terrifying in its certainty. Vexnar's tendrils trembled uncontrollably as he recorded. Unprecedented. Ritual combat transformed into diplomacy. She has forced the council to acknowledge her claim. The consequences will shake the galaxy. Traz stared in horror. And if the Dravak refuse, if they send another champion? Vexnar looked down as Myra Kane turned and walked toward the exit, her people rising in unison to follow, their movements synchronized like a hunting pack. Then, he whispered, awestruck, we will see what humanity does when the prey refuses to fall. The grand arena had seen blood before. It had echoed with death cries, with roars of triumph, with the madness of thousands drunk on violence, but never silence like this. The great champion of the Dravak Empire, undefeated through 97 matches, lay sprawled on the dirt. His massive limbs twitched helplessly, locked in paralysis from a strike that should have been impossible. And the human, the fragile, weaponless human, stood over him. Myra Kane bled freely from her shallow wound, scarlet drops splattering against alien dust, but she stood steady. Her shoulders rose and fell with calm breath. Her eyes were clear. Her voice, when it came, carried like a blade cutting through the stunned quiet. I want to be very clear about something, Gorantar. She crouched until her gaze met his immobilized eyes. This isn't personal. I don't hate you. I don't even hate your people. The audience rippled with confusion. Murmurs in dozens of tongues surged across the tiers. Combatants didn't speak like this. Combatants screamed for glory or bellowed defiance. They did not crouch like teachers delivering a lesson. Myra's lips tightened. This is about the Tresian colony, about the 16 human settlements your empire annexed 6 years ago, settlements you claimed we abandoned, settlements where 3 million of my people now live as slaves. The silence broke. The crowd erupted in overlapping voices, shouts of shock, laughter of disbelief, gasps of horror. Translators strained to capture the storm. Professor Vexnar froze, his tendrils curling against his chest. By the void, he whispered. She's using the duel as diplomacy. Traz's 4 eyes blinked wildly in perfect unison. That's illegal. That's impossible. There are no records of the Human Federation authorizing such a maneuver. Vexnar's 3 hearts thundered. Then it isn't authorized, it's unofficial, it's dangerous, and it is brilliant. Below, Myra rose to her full height, her bloodied arm dripping steadily. She turned in a slow circle, addressing not just the fallen champion, but every species watching. Our diplomats begged, she said. Our petitions were ignored, the council stalled. And while you argued over borders, over maps, over claims, 3 million humans were stripped of their rights and forced into mines. Her voice didn't tremble, it struck with the precision of a hammer. So today, she continued, raising her chin, I bring a message your people understand. She raised both arms wide, crimson streaking down pale flesh. Strength. The crowd roared a cacophony of disbelief. Some cheered, others hissed, many shrieked in outrage. But no one remained silent. Only the humans in the stand sat still. 50 figures, motionless, eyes sharp, their posture rigid. They didn't cheer, they didn't blink. They are waiting, Vexnar whispered, zooming in on their faces. Not for her victory, for his fall, to them it is already certain. Gorantar's mandibles clattered furiously, though his limbs still refused to obey. You dare use me for politics? The translator rasped. Yes, Myra said simply. She crouched again, her eyes narrowing. Because your empire understands blood better than words. She stood and looked around the arena, her voice sharp, amplified by the sound system until it filled every crevice of Nexus Station. By the ancient laws of combat, recognized by this council, the outcome of this duel is binding. If I win, the Tresian territories return to human governance within 30 standard days. Chaos. The Dravak section shrieked in fury, pounding their limbs against the stands until the vibrations shook the walls. The Valyrians cackled, the Zenturi hissed approval, the Florins sang notes of shock. Betting devices exploded with activity as odds collapsed into madness. Vexnar could hardly keep up with his recordings. Unprecedented, a legal claim delivered through combat. If she succeeds, the council must acknowledge the outcome. If she fails, her people lose everything. Traz's vocal sac inflated to bursting. Professor, this is madness. One woman cannot change interstellar law. Vexnar turned, his ocular implant glinting. One human can. Myra bent, her hand brushing the arena floor. When she rose again, she held something jagged and sharp. A shard of Gorantar's own exoskeleton. Broken loose during his wild attacks, its serrated edge glittered under the lights. The crowd gasped as one. Vexnar's tendrils stiffened. She wanted this. She provoked him into frenzy, forced him to break pieces of himself. The Dravak carapace is one of the few substances sharp enough to pierce its own armor. Traz's eyes widened with terror. She lured him into crafting his own weapon against himself. Myra crouched once more, holding the shard in both hands like a ritual blade. Her voice softened, intimate despite the amplification. Like I said, Gorantar, this isn't personal, just necessary. Then she struck. The shard drove into the vulnerable seam she had mapped with such patience. It slid through chitin into flesh with terrible ease. The champion convulsed once. His body locked rigid, then went still. His mandibles hung open, his compound eyes clouded. The terror of the arenas, the Empire's undefeated war god, was dead. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Myra gripped the shard again, and with one smooth motion, severed his head. Even species accustomed to carnage recoiled at the act's cold precision. Gasps of horror rippled across the stands. The announcers' many throats faltered, unable to find words. Myra Kane rose, holding the massive severed head high above her own. Alien blood poured down her arms, staining her black suit, pooling at her feet. Her face was calm, not triumphant, not bloodthirsty, calm. Her voice, carried across the silence, was sharp as a blade. I claim this victory in the name of the Human Federation. By the laws of combat, the Tresian colonies are rightfully human. The Dravak Empire has 30 days to comply. She turned slowly, ensuring every eye, every lens, every recording captured her next words. Should they refuse, I will meet their next champion here. But next time, her lips curled into a razor smile, I recommend they bring a weapon. The silence shattered. The Dravak section howled like a wounded beast, their stomps so violent the floor trembled. Other species shouted, debated, laughed, cursed. The humans alone remained silent, their stillness now terrifying in its certainty. Vexnar's tendrils trembled uncontrollably as he recorded. Unprecedented. Ritual combat transformed into diplomacy. She has forced the Council to acknowledge her claim. The consequences will shake the galaxy. Traz stared in horror. And if the Dravak refuse, if they send another champion? Vexnar looked down as Myra Kane turned and walked toward the exit, her people rising in unison to follow, their movements synchronized like a hunting pack. Then, he whispered, awestruck, we will see what humanity does when the prey refuses to fall. The image spread across the station within minutes. Every screen, every data terminal, every private feed displayed it. A small, blood-streaked human woman standing in the center of the grand arena, holding the severed head of the Dravak champion high above her. Not smiling, not gloating, but calm. Her expression was a paradox, merciless and merciful at once, as if she had simply completed a task. Professor Vexnar knew at once it would become iconic. He had studied dozens of cultural flashpoints across the galaxy, wars that began with a single image, revolutions sparked by a single gesture. This was one of them. And the Council knew it too. The Great Council chamber of Nexus Station was chaos. Representatives from over 60 species packed into the circular hall, their translators humming frantically to keep pace with the uproar. Some shrieked for sanctions against the humans. Others demanded the duel's result be honored. A few simply shouted to be heard, their words drowned by the storm. Vexnar sat in the observer's tier, his tendrils curling tight with exhilaration. He had never seen the chamber like this, so divided, so shaken. His assistant Traz clung to his recording device, 4 eyes blinking furiously. They cannot let this stand, Traz insisted. If the Council validates her claim, every empire will start settling disputes through bloodsport. It will be chaos. Vexnar snorted through his respirator. Chaos, yes, but also precedent, and precedent is the marrow of law. The Dravak delegation was apoplectic. Ambassador Krillnash slammed his bladed limbs against the dais, his translator booming. This so-called duel was a sham, a mockery of tradition. That creature used trickery, not honor. The colonies remain ours. Across the chamber, the human representative, an older man in a plain Federation suit, stood slowly. His voice, carried by translators, was quiet but unyielding. Your champion agreed to the duel. Your laws recognized the arena. Your people witnessed his defeat. By your own traditions, the outcome is binding. To deny it now would dishonor not us but yourselves. The chamber erupted again. Vexnar's hearts raced as he scribbled notes. Do you see, Traz? The human delegation barely has to argue. Their champion's victory speaks for itself. It is psychological warfare. The Dravak pride binds them tighter than any treaty could. But Professor, Traz stammered, the Dravak will never surrender those colonies. They cannot. It would show weakness. Exactly, Vexnar murmured, eyes gleaming. That is the beauty of it. They are trapped. Either they honor the duel and retreat, or they refuse and face the perception that their laws mean nothing. In both cases, humanity wins. Outside the chamber, Nexus Station boiled with reaction. Merchants replayed footage of Myra's fight on endless loops, drawing crowds of stunned aliens who pointed and whispered. Betting halls paid out fortunes and bankrupted others in minutes. Soldiers from minor species watched the video in silence, reevaluating the fragile creatures they had once dismissed as harmless. And among the humans scattered across the station, there was no celebration. They moved deliberately, their posture rigid, their eyes sharp. They walked like hunters who had delivered the killing blow and now waited to see whether the prey would collapse or charge again. Back in the chamber, the Valyrian delegate spread three of his throats wide, his voices weaving in eerie harmony. The laws are clear. The duel was valid. The Human Federation has claimed victory. We must honor it. The Florin representative rippled her fronds uneasily. But if we validate this, what stops every minor power from challenging empires with champions of their own? The Valyrian hissang a reply. Perhaps nothing, perhaps everything. But the duel was public, binding, witnessed. To erase it would unravel the very fabric of our accords. The Dravak ambassador shrieked in fury, his mandibles clashing violently. This is a human trick. They planned this. They engineered this humiliation. From his seat above, Vexnar allowed himself the smallest smile. Yes, he thought, they did, and you walked into it willingly. At last, the presiding arbiter raised her crystalline staff, releasing a resonant hum that silenced the chamber. Enough, she declared. The council will deliberate formally. Until then, the status of the Tresian colonies is in contest. The Dravak Empire has 30 standard days to comply with the challenge's outcome, or contest it with another duel. The words rippled outward, their weight heavy. 30 days. 30 days until the galaxy changed again. As the session adjourned, Traz turned to his mentor, his voice low. Professor, do you believe the Dravak will send another champion? Vexnar's ocular implant tracked the departing Dravak delegation, their mandibles clattering with barely contained rage. He recorded every twitch, every stomp, every snarl. Yes, he said softly, they cannot afford not to. Traz shivered, his eyes blinking in frantic rhythm. And if they do you believe the human will return? Vexnar thought of the image already seared into the galaxy's memory. Myra Kane, drenched in alien blood, lifting the severed head of the Empire's greatest champion without a flicker of triumph. He remembered her calm voice, her quiet certainty. She will return, Vexnar said, his tendrils tightened. Because she was never unarmed, she was the weapon. The image did not fade. Across Nexus Station, across every outpost and world connected to the Council's data networks, Myra Kane's figure replayed in endless cycles. A small human standing alone in the arena, drenched in alien blood, holding aloft the severed head of the Dravak champion. It was no longer a duel, it was a message. And the galaxy had heard it. In the days that followed, Council channels overflowed with arguments. Some species demanded the duel be struck from the record. Others insisted it be enshrined as precedent. Smaller powers whispered excitedly that if humans could topple giants with nothing but cunning and stubbornness, perhaps they too could challenge their own oppressors. Merchants found humans suddenly more respected and more feared. Soldiers studied Myra's tactics in slow motion, searching for flaws and finding few. Scholars debated whether humanity had discovered a new form of warfare or merely revealed what had always been their strength: adaptability. Everywhere the same question spread. What are the humans really capable of? For Professor Vexnar, the answer was clear. He sat in his quarters replaying his recordings for the 100th time. Myra Kane's smile, her evasions, her patience, her final, merciless strike. Each moment carved itself deeper into his memory. His notes filled entire data slates. But one line appeared again and again, circled, underlined, highlighted until his ocular implant could not miss it. She was not unarmed, she was the weapon. Traz, however, was less certain. "Professor," he said one evening, his four eyes blinking in asynchronous rhythm, "I do not understand. The Dravak are powerful, resilient. They have conquered systems with fleets, yet one human woman toppled their greatest champion. How?" Vexnar exhaled through his respirator, the sound a weary whistle. "Because you still think of strength as claws, armor, muscle. Humans redefine it. They weaponize everything: knowledge, patience, psychology, even weakness." Traz shivered, and if the Dravak refused to honor the duel? Vexnar's tendrils curled tightly. "Then they will send another champion, and humanity will not hesitate. That is the true danger." On the 30th day, the Dravak answered. Their ambassador stormed into the council chamber, mandibles clattering with fury, translator booming through the hall. "We do not yield. The Tresian colonies are ours by right. We will not abandon them." Gasps echoed through the chamber. By refusing the duel's outcome, the Dravak had chosen war. But before the arbiter could respond, a murmur spread through the chamber. Delegates turned as the human delegation rose in unison. Their leader, the same older man who had spoken so calmly before, raised his voice. "Then send another champion," he said. "You know where to find us." And with that, the humans departed, their movements synchronized, deliberate. The chamber buzzed with unease. Later, Vexnar watched from the observation deck as Myra Kane herself boarded a transport. She wore the same black fabric, still scarred from battle, though it had been cleaned of blood. Her arm bore a fresh scar from Gorantar's blade, but she moved easily, confidently. She paused at the ramp, scanning the crowd of reporters, soldiers, and scholars. For the first time since the duel, she spoke publicly. "We don't seek war," she said, her voice steady. "But we won't run from it. If the Dravak want another duel, I'll be waiting." Her eyes swept the crowd, cold and calm. "And next time I won't need their weapons, I'll bring my own." Then she disappeared into the transport, leaving silence in her wake. That night, Professor Vexnar finalized his report. His conclusion was short, but he knew it would be quoted for centuries. Humans are absolutely, undeniably, and thoroughly insane. This is not an opinion. It is fact. And after what I witnessed in the grand arena, I must add one more truth: they are also terrifying. He closed the file with a decisive click. Outside, the galaxy shifted. Alliances trembled, empires reevaluated, and the council braced for conflict. And somewhere among the stars, a single human woman sharpened her resolve, ready to fight again. Because Myra Kane was not a gladiator, not a diplomat, not a soldier. She was the weapon,